Hello and a very warm welcome to our Employer Masterclass session from the Change in Education Group. This is an opportunity for employers to give you, the students, a real insight into their world of work. My name is Amos Madra, your host and careers advisor here at the Change in Education Group. Joining me today is Antje Budge, who is an incorporated civil engineer and currently works for Balfour Beatty as a design coordinator on a 53 million rail project. After school in Germany, she completed an apprenticeship before attending university in England to gain a Bachelor in Science in Civil Engineering. This course included a placement year on site. Her career after graduating began with AMEC PLC or AMEC and working as a site engineer on a variety of infrastructure projects, including the M6 toll, very familiar with that one, and of course the upgrade of the A1M, Darrington to Dishforth. Work on sewage treatment, works on road stabilization projects, and then soon followed. After a career break of 9 years to bring up her family, she returned to work via a returners program. Since then, Antje has been working on a range of infrastructure projects in the Northwest and Midlands. As part of a pre-construction projects team, she also mentors 2 apprentices and an active member of the Institution of Civil Engineers Cheshire Committee. That's not all. Antje's current role as a design coordinator utilizes his skills gained on site. The work requires close coordination with both clients and designers, ensuring projects are designed in line with client requirements and available budget. This involves reviewing designs, driving innovation and possible and liaising with the construction teams to develop design that can be built on site. A mouthful. She's currently working towards becoming a chartered civil engineer. Antje, a warm welcome to you. I don't think I've had to do an introduction quite as long as that one. You've done it all. Wow.
Yes, it's that's a nice thing about the career in construction. It's so changeable, and you can kind of change from highways projects to clean water projects. You can work all over the country, you can work all over the world. So actually, for somebody who's looking for a career that's interesting and challenging and where you can learn new things every single day, civil engineering ticks every single box. And the best thing is at the end of the day, you can see what you've built. So you mentioned the M6 toll road. I built some of the bridges on there, and every single time I'm driving over there, whoever's in the car with me will get told about the bridges again, because it's just a really good feeling to say, yes, I built that.
Incredible. And do you know what? I'm just one of those people that are really keen on bridges. And when I do drive on the M6 toll road, it was just playing in my mind as you were saying that. You know, when I drive on the M6 toll road, I do take the time to look at those bridges and think, they took some time in designing that and in getting the natural landscape to merge into that concrete that then runs across the motorway. And it really shows engineering in its best form. And thanks to you, I can now say that I've spoken to the person who was, part of that. Wow, an incredible honor. So, of course, from building roads to from infrastructure to sewages and all different things, it really does give you a wide spectrum of different things to do. How did you get into this career? Where did it all start from that 16-year-old that was still thinking about what she wanted to do in the future?
Yeah, it's interesting looking back. I really did not know what I wanted to do. So it's I knew I wanted to do something a bit more practical, but going back at school, that wasn't really an option. So you had some, woodworking classes, but there wasn't really any option to do anything a bit more practical within the scope of school. So when a friend of mine left school and started a sort of basic year, which is the basic year for all the trades in Germany, where you learn a bit of tiling, a bit of roofing, a bit of cap drawings. And I thought that sounds like more fun than school. So started doing that and actually thought this is really good, and I really enjoyed it. And again, working out on site as a carpenter when I did my apprenticeship, it's just nice to be able to be out and do things and build things and come away at the end of the day and you actually haven't achieved something. And then I decided that actually I wanted to take this further and wanted to take up a career in civil engineering, which at 16, 17, I never would have dreamt about. But actually, I remember sitting in my first lecture at university and thinking, this is exactly what I was, this is what I was hoping for when they did the introduction. I thought, this sounds great. This sounds interesting. And yeah, that's the rest is history. So it's been interesting, and it's been challenging and changing, but it's a good career.
Yeah, and I think what's really incredible is just that self-awareness from such a young age. And I suppose that's the difficulty that a lot of young people go through. They don't quite know what they want to do. Would you say naturally that you're a reflexive person? Are you someone that just takes the time to think about your interests? It's when I get to speak to a lot of young people, and a lot of them just don't know what they want to do.
I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because you see the jobs that are really obvious, the doctors, the police, people working in the police force. Those are the really obvious jobs, but there's an awful lot of jobs that are not so obvious. But even now in my career, when I'm working with people, I work with a lot of landscape architects, for example, and they've got geography degrees, and there's all sorts of, which I wasn't really aware. And I'm thinking, maybe that would have been something interesting as well if I'd been aware of it. So really, in hindsight, I wish I'd sort of asked more questions, spoke to more people and said, what is it actually that you're doing? And I think these days with the internet, certainly it's a lot more opportunity to even Google and say, I like English and geography. What kind of jobs are there out there? So I know some people I've met who were very clear very early on what they wanted to do. But as you say, I think at 16 or 17 is very, very difficult, isn't it? Even if you have to take some options and you maybe choose what you enjoy doing and what you're good at. But where does that necessarily lead you? So it's difficult sometimes, isn't it? But certainly it's good to do these kind of events to actually give people a bit more of an understanding of what options are out there. And there's some amazing opportunities job-wise out there. And obviously jobs that are developing that even 10 years ago when it existed. And even in my role, construction is very slow sometimes to catch up with technology, but it's now we're using drones, we're using computer software, we're using 3D, we're using 4D animations, and there's people there. I wouldn't be able to do that myself, but I'm working with people who can do all that kind of stuff. So construction is a very wide field where other people can also kind of contribute without actually having to sort of go into civil engineering in particular, but it's a super wide field with a lot of opportunities for people.
Yeah, you've made a really good point as well. I mean, I was talking to someone earlier today and they were saying to me, 80% of jobs that primary school children will be doing in the future and don't exist. Yeah. You talk about using drones, and there's things that exist today that we even didn't know about a few years back. There are going to be things that are going to be coming up in the future, which I'm sure is part of already what you do. Augmented reality, AI, and all these different things that are part and parcel of what you do every day, but didn't exist years ago. So things are constantly changing. And I think another advantage that you've had is you've had the best of both worlds. You've done a degree and you were able to pinch yourself and say, wow, this is it. This is really what I want to do. You knew that was the place you wanted to be. But also you had the opportunity of doing an apprenticeship. Now, what would you say to someone who's still thinking, do I go the degree route or the apprenticeship route, especially someone who's had the chance of doing both? What would you say to that person?
I still think, for me personally, leaving university, I think when I left school, I wasn't quite ready for university. So for me personally, the apprenticeship route was perfect. And actually, if we'd had something like degree apprenticeships going back, that would probably be very, very good for me. So you've got the combination of actually working on site or working wherever you're working, and also having the university education that gives you a little bit more kind of theoretical backup. So in hindsight, that would have been a really, really good career path for me. So I just think I think sometimes still think about apprenticeships as being, not worth as much, but I think it's a really good opportunity to go in, show your work ethic and really learn about what it's like to even get up in the morning, being there at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, working long hour days, and just even getting your head around to getting around to doing that. And it gives you an amazing foundation to work in your chosen career. And certainly in construction, there's people who go to university, then they're doing master's degrees, then they're doing amazing things. But there's also people who've started out, as a labourer on site and then worked their way up. And there's always opportunities, if you're keen and interested to learn, to develop further and to do further courses and to go back to university. So I think it's whichever feels the best solution for you personally, whether you're a more practical person, want to go out to work, or whether you feel that going to university will be a benefit. They're both good. They really are good. And obviously with the apprenticeships, you've got the learning without paying the fees at university, which is obviously a huge bonus. And I understand that for some careers, going to university is going to be great, but it might well be worth thinking that, is it, if the university degree is a bit so, or you've got a really good apprenticeship behind you, which is the person you would want to employ? Certainly our apprentices that we've got working for us, they are 2021, the two young men I mentor. They've been doing it for nearly 4 years now. They're going to university 1 day a week. They're on site 4 days a week, and they are flying. They're confident. They're trusted members of the team. They're so good at what they're doing, and they're being supported by the company. They're doing their degrees. And as part of the civil engineering degree apprenticeship, part of the process is that you also then sit your incorporated review with the Institution of Civil Engineers. So you will be fully fledged engineer with an apprenticeship behind you. You will have a BEng degree, and you will be an incorporated engineer after maybe 6 years. So it's a lot of hard work. But if you then look at somebody straight out of university who might have a very, very good theoretical knowledge, but is actually at the same age, probably quite a step behind the apprentices because they've got so much more experience. So it's, if you're in any doubt, look at it at the apprenticeship route, because I personally think it's worthwhile.
Yeah,
it's worthwhile.
You definitely make a good point there. And, when you look at it in that aspect, you can see definitely the value of apprenticeships, and that's why they are more popular these days, because you get the best of both worlds. You get the qualification as well as the practical experience, which you just cannot get in a classroom. And so that definitely gives you that opportunity. And of course, you learn things, you learn the culture, things that are not taught in lectures. There's certain things, codes and conducts that you have to learn that you can only learn by being on the ground and seeing for yourself. And like you said, by the time the graduate arrives on the job, the apprentice is already well established, and they've got that advantage over the graduate. So it really does make it very appealing. But not to write off university degrees, because they play their relevance as well. Especially these days, they do offer placements as well, because they've had to understand and realize that, to compete with the apprenticeships, they need to offer placements, especially within the engineering sector as well. So definitely good points you've made there today. What would you say that your mentees would come to you and always ask you for? What's that one thing that they are keen to learn?
Certainly my support certainly guides them in achieving their incorporated status. So what we're doing with them is they need to write quarterly reports. So it's just a lot of the processes of helping them in developing their report writing skills and making sure that by the time that they've come through the end of their process, they're actually very, very competent at writing reports for whatever topic it needs to be, and then just guiding them through the process really of becoming the incorporated engineer, and also to encourage them to see what they've achieved. I think it's very easy sometimes for them to think, well, I haven't actually done something really special here, when you think, well, a year ago, would you have been able to do this? No, you haven't. So it's very, very difficult, I think, sometimes for yourself to see what you have achieved and how far you've come. So I'm quite keen to get them to understand that they can see how much they've achieved, and actually what they now take as for granted because they're doing it day to day. About a year ago, they might have actually not been confident enough and not have been knowledgeable enough to do it. So just to guide them and encourage them. But to be honest, they're both very, very self-motivated, and they're easy to look after because they're just really great guys and really motivated. But certainly, again, if somebody just needs a bit of a prompt or a little bit of help, that's kind of where I could then say, right, you could do this, or there's something else you can have a look at there. But yeah, generally I think that's the thing with the apprenticeships. You need to be quite self-motivated because it is a lot of hard work. But
Yeah.
it's certainly out on site. Nobody would look at, have you got the degree? Are you an apprentice? They just look at, are you, reliable? Are you listening? Are you trying to learn? Are you asking for advice when you need help? Are you just kind of going off of piece and things go wrong? And obviously out on construction sites, things can go very wrong very quickly. So yes, just basically encourage them to try their best and learn from university, but also from the people out on site, which sometimes, they've worked on site sometimes for 40 years. Just because they may have never been to university, if they've done the job for 40 years, go and ask them, because they will be able to teach you and help you and guide you. And it's always good to ask the question, because people will be keen to help you and be keen to support you in what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's always the way, isn't it? The person who's been doing that job for 40 years usually ends up being the most helpful in the situation, because they know the job inside out. And I suppose for your mentees, they're very fortunate. They're in a great position to have someone mentoring them, someone that they can always just lean on and go and ask for advice, and years of experience is almost just downloaded on you. And it gives you that confidence. You said that they're very confident, and then they can understand why. When that safety net, if you want to say, is there, it's always helpful, and I think that's one thing young people that I wish more young people could have the opportunity of receiving, is that guidance of someone like yourself. And I know it's different from every sector, but we've got a lot of students who are in STEM watching this. How can they go about finding someone like you to support them and guide them?
Well, certainly within Balfour Beatty, that is, as soon as you're an apprentice or a graduate with us, you will be allocated a delegated engineer and a supervising engineer to support you through the process, because the expectation is that you will be involved with the Institution of Civil Engineers. You will become technician member and an incorporated engineer and a charter engineer, however far you want to go. So that's more or less a given. But if you're in a company where you haven't really got that support, the Institution of Civil Engineers could connect people with mentors, or even just have a look on LinkedIn, see if there's anybody in your field of work who's local. Just send them a message, because what's the worst that can happen if somebody says, I'm really sorry, but I'm a bit too busy, but they might be able to pass you on to somebody. And again, LinkedIn is a great tool for things like that. We can actually see who's local, or have a look at your local institution or local companies. Just pick up a name, see if you can find contact details, and just contact them. If all else fails, if you can't get anywhere in your company, as I say, most people are very happy to help. And if they haven't got the time to do it themselves, they might well point you in the right direction. And if they're not interested, you haven't lost anything, but just showing the drive and just showing a little bit that you want somebody to support you goes a long way. And I think, again, companies certainly realize the value of mentoring. So even if you haven't got an official mentor scheme, there might well be somebody if you ask the question, there might well be somebody there who could support you.
Yeah, again, really good advice. So working for the right company, it certainly helps. So doing a bit of research and seeing what prospects are out there for yourself if you're getting into this industry. And of course, networking on LinkedIn, a great site in terms of meeting people and getting some advice. And, there's always people who are willing to help, which is really good. I'd like to know what a typical day is like for you. I can just imagine, you then M6 or somewhere random, just looking at what projects you need to work on. What's a typical day like for you?
Well, at the moment, obviously, when I was out on site, it was very, very busy and lots of kind of running around, telling people kind of where to build things, what to do, checking things. And there were long days. Now, in the pre-construction team, it's slightly different, because we're basically doing all the work before a project starts on site. So it's mainly office-based, but again, with some site visits. At the moment, obviously with lockdown, we were very lucky that we could do a lot of the work online. So it's a lot of Teams meetings at the moment. But it's still such a variety. So, for example, just now I had a meeting about traffic management that we need to plan for our works, because there's applications that need to go in for that. We're preparing planning applications for some of our sites. We've had a design team meeting this morning where we took some of the designs and discussed them with the client and the designer to say, well, this is our site, does it actually work? And then the queries that are coming out of there then need to be actioned. So it's more theoretical these days, but I've got a huge variety of topics I'm getting involved in. So I'm learning about environmental aspects, for example. So we've got a lot of our sites where there's a potential of great crested newts, and we then can't just go in and do what we're proposing to do. We need to make sure that we know exactly where the newts are, what kind of licenses we might need, what kind of requirements we have to fulfill before we can actually go to sites. So it's a constant learning process. I might then go off and do a bit of research online, good old Google. What does that mean? Google is great for something like that. And again, asking our designers, because they've got very, very a large array of specialists when it comes to ecology and landscape design. So in my role, I'm kind of like a bit of a jack of all trades where I'm dealing with, it could be, as I say, it could be building roads or railways or sewage treatment plants. So a lot of the specialist knowledge then comes from our subcontractors, or even sometimes within the clients, they've got people who know exactly what they're talking about. So it's good to have this sort of background, but it's a lot of learning every day as well and asking questions. And but yeah.
And you raised some really important points. The local ecology is a huge part now in any building structure. Of course, you've got to keep the natural environment if you can. And just with the G7 meeting in Cornwall, there's been so many arguments, people saying that so much of the wildlife has disappeared because of the buildings that have taken place, and it's trying to bring that back again. And obviously this carbon neutral target for 2050. So it all plays a huge part. And again, it's having that attention to detail for all the small, minute things. And in fact, I would probably argue, and I'm sure you would say the same, that this is possibly one of the biggest issues for you at the moment.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's very easy to go in and build a massive structure and not worry about the impact we're having. But there's again, things that we didn't have 5 years ago, carbon calculators, where you can basically say, well, this is my structure that I'm proposing to do. What will be the carbon that's being used while we're building it, while we're maintaining it, when we're demolishing it? And that's right up there. Even within Balfour Beatty now, they've got a huge target to reduce carbon. Everything we're doing, the carbon is having a huge influence. As you say, we're trying to, where we're building things, we're trying to improve things. And we're trying to do things for the wider local economy as well. We're trying to work with schools, work with local projects. So we're not coming in, building whatever we're doing and going away again. It's part and parcel. You can't do that anymore. 20 years ago, that was absolutely fine because people just didn't really bother that much. You absolutely cannot do that anymore. So we're working a lot more with ecologists and landscape specialists. And it's you couldn't just build a design and say, this is my bit of a concrete, and people go, that's fine. It's just not happening anymore. So I think it's a change for me as well, what I need to learn and what I need to be aware of, because it's much wider reaching. And but as you say, it's so important because obviously we need to build new structures, but they also need to be working with the local environment and working in reducing carbon. There's some really interesting initiatives and really opportunities there to develop concrete that does clean up the air or whatever it is. And again, that's great opportunities where we're on site now, and our client is really pushing innovation. So we're looking at what we can use where we can build more things off site, so we're actually spending less time on site because it's cheaper, it's potentially safer, it's potentially less carbon that we're using, but also we're reducing the time we're on site. So just in general, the footprint we're producing is a lot smaller. And again, innovation drives all that, and there's amazing things that are coming out that we're kind of looking at and go, well, where can we include that? Even down to when we're setting up our sites, we're looking now into whether we can use solar powers on our cabins, whether we can use water capture so that you can actually use less of the water on site, whether we can use fewer generators, whether we can use less electricity on site, and just finding little things like that all add to that. So it's one of the biggest issues in the industry at the moment, that reducing the carbon and being carbon neutral is kind of the thing at the moment.
Yeah, it really sounds exciting, and it really looks. Yeah, it sounds as though you're at the forefront, and you're making every effort to watch your carbon footprint, and to obviously consider the environment, and work with local communities as well. So these are all very important factors to get the local community to buy in into what you're doing. As you said, things have changed from 20 years ago, where you just go in and dump, I won't say dump, but just leave a structure there, to understanding, and I suppose because now that the community have bought into it, there's potential for it to last longer as well, because they can take ownership for it as well. They've had an input in that as well. And of course, innovation and technology is playing a big part in that too. So yeah, it sounds great. Now, I know that there's a question that a lot of the audience watching will want to ask. What is it that you enjoy the most about what you do, and what are some of the most challenging things that you have to deal with?
If I start with challenging, it's certainly at the moment we're just trying to finalize the design and just making sure that it's not just sort of producing a drawing, it's all the bits that sit behind it. So making sure that the right approval processes are followed, that the right people have looked at it and said, yeah, that's fine. That, as I said before, we've got the right licenses, that the teams out on site can build it. So sometimes there's then different people that want different things, that pull in different directions. So when you think something that should be really straightforward, all of a sudden grows arms and legs and takes forever to sort. But other days, you kind of, there's a problem, all of a sudden you look at it and you think, oh, I've got a solution, we can do it this way. And in the end of the day, being out on site and seeing the things develop and actually being part of that, and feeding back to people, and working in a team and just understanding more, and then go, actually, yeah, we've sorted it, we've got a drawing, we can go out to site now, we can build this. And it's just really good. So basically the big thing is, I'm not walking away and I've not left anything behind. I can really say, look, I've made a difference here. I've made a difference to the local economy. I've made a difference to, local people. And especially if it's working in your own local area, when you think, well, I've built this road and actually I'm getting the use out of it and I can see the benefits. So, for example, where I live, Balfour Beatty built a new roundabout, or improved a roundabout. And then you read in the paper where people say, oh, this new roundabout is really good, it works so much better. And then I remember driving over it for the first time thinking, yeah, this is a lot better. So really, really making a difference to people's lives in a very, very obvious way is, for me personally, best thing about the job.
Yeah, definitely. And again, being at the forefront, it's constantly in the news, the way we travel, the way we work, everything is constantly changing. Councils want less traffic into cities. So obviously the way you have to develop and design the roads has to change. It has to cater for cyclists, has to cater for e-scooters these days, pedestrians walking into the city centres, and less room for cars. Electric buses, perhaps having a system in place that allows electrification for buses and trams. So things are constantly changing. And again, this is an exciting time. I can't believe we're quickly coming towards the end of our interview here today. What final words would you like to leave our audience with?
I think one thing I'd like to say is, if you're not sure about what kind of job you want to do, go and ask companies if you can do some work experience. And then you can Balfour Beatty, we offer even a day where you could just come in and have a look around a site and talk to people, or a week or a month. Spend your summer holidays just trying something out. And that gives you the opportunity to try out various different jobs. And while you're in an office, you can then talk to various people and say, what is it you do? And that actually might make you, or might help you in realizing either, well, actually, this is really not what I want to do at all. This is not what I expected, which is fine if you've done it for a week. It's not fine after you've done 4 years at university and you think, oh, no. But yeah, get as much as information as you can. But also, I think these days, you're not going to be in a job for the rest of your life. So just because you start your career in something doesn't mean there isn't a way to develop sideways or change careers. So don't be afraid, because there's not really any wrong decisions you can make. If you find something that you really like, that's a good first starting point, and then you can develop from there. So, and I know it's difficult sometimes to know what you want to do, but it's the start of your career. You've got years ahead of you to develop and find out what you really want to do and really enjoy. So just go for it and enjoy it.
Incredible advice. Antje, thank you so much for sharing
Okay,
your
thank you.
experience and wisdom with us. Find something you like. You've heard it here. Not only have you, Antje, made a mark on the country, the infrastructure, the M6, the toll road. I'm familiar with that route, that stretch. At least I know now I can put a face to the person who's been working on that. You've made a mark that cannot be erased, but you've also made a mark on a lot of the audience here watching today. And I just want to say thank you so much for doing that, and appreciate you. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me.